I couldn't take it anymore. The professor's droning voice was worse than watching paint dry. My eyes glazed over as I stared at the clock, each tick dragging out like an eternity. I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend to care. The lecture was supposed to be enlightening, but instead, it was a soul-sucking monotony that made me question why I'd ever bothered to show up. I glanced around the room, hoping to catch a sign of life in the other students. But all I saw were blank stares, people shifting uncomfortably in their seats, and a few who had already succumbed to the lure of sleep. It was like we were all trapped in some kind of shared purgatory, each minute stretching into the next, with no end in sight. My foot started tapping restlessly under the desk. Every fiber of my being screamed to get up and leave, but the social contract held me back. Was it really that bad to walk out? I mean, what would they think? But then again, why should I care? It wasn't like anyone was getting anything out of this, least of all me. The longer I stayed, the more I felt like a prisoner to politeness, trapped by the unspoken rule that leaving a lecture was somehow a sin. But then, something in me snapped. It was a mix of boredom, frustration, and the desperate need for escape. I realized I wasn't just bored. I was angry. Angry that my time was being wasted, that I was being held hostage by a lecture that was nothing more than a regurgitation of the textbook. My mind was already made up before I fully realized it. I was going to leave, and I didn't care who noticed. I slowly began to gather my things, trying to move as quietly as possible, but the rustling of papers seemed deafening in the silence of the room. My heart pounded as I stood up, the eyes of my classmates boring into me like lasers. I could feel the judgment, the silent question hanging in the air. Was I really going to walk out? But as I took those first few steps toward the door, I noticed something incredible. The girl in the row behind me started packing up too, followed by a guy 3 rows down. It was like my decision had given them permission to break free as well. The tension in the room shifted, and suddenly, it wasn't just me. A quiet rebellion was brewing, one that I had unknowingly sparked. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I pushed open the door and stepped into the hallway. The stale air of the lecture hall replaced by the fresh, liberating scent of freedom. But even as I walked away, the question gnawed at me. Was I wrong to leave? Was it selfish to prioritize my own sanity over the expected decorum? Or was I justified in reclaiming my time from a lecture that offered nothing but boredom and frustration? But here's where the lesson lies. This story isn't just about leaving a boring lecture. It's about understanding the importance of valuing our time and knowing when to make decisions that prioritize our well-being. While society often pressures us to conform to certain expectations, it's crucial to recognize when those expectations no longer serve us. This narrative encourages viewers to think critically about how they spend their time and the boundaries they set in situations where their mental and emotional well-being is at stake. So here's my dilemma. Was I wrong to stand up and leave that mind-numbing lecture? Should I have stayed out of respect? Or was I right to prioritize my own time and sanity? What would you do in my place? Stay seated and suffer in silence, or make your escape and risk the judgment of others?